Evening, folks. How are we all? Got six in tonight. Good stuff. We've got Mr. Gregory, Error 42, and Arvik. How are you guys? I hope you're all. I hope you're all doing well. Listen, I'm sitting. I'm watching the countdown thing, and I'm thinking, you know what? I've got absolutely bloody nothing to talk about at all. There's a couple of questions. So listen, please. If there's anything you want to hear my views on, you want to hear me talk about, whatever, anything at all, any subject, shoot away, go for it. Please give me some stuff. Do you like my t-shirt? How cool is that? I got that down in London. I think it's pretty damn epic. It's awesome, and I've actually got a really, I've got an extra special one for Sunday, being a Commodore 64 one. So, yeah, please give me some questions, give me some stuff to talk about. What I thought, excuse me, and I'm like a broken record. I'm like your favourite uncle who tells a story, and then you're thinking to yourself, I've bloody heard that 1,000 times. You've already told me that. I am that uncle. Um, I'm also at that age. Yeah. You know what, Colin? I saw. I think I can't remember who it was. Somebody did make somebody did even in Ian. Somebody did make a video of it. I'll need to dig that out and give it a go. In fact, it was Lone Boy's post. He did a video of that game. I'll need to check it out. So what I thought I would do for something I'm saying a wee bit different, although I have spoke about it multiple times, is I am going to talk about the taboo subject of video game piracy, and basically just how what my experience of video game piracy was. I know some people might give the video a thumbs down, but I don't give a shit. They can thumbs down away. Who cares? Good evening, LFC. How are you, buddy? Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick wee drink. I've got very little bit Lucozade. Hang on, 2 ticks. So, yeah, video game piracy. Where do we start? Right, let's go right back in time. Back to 1983. I had just started working in a supermarket, and I was still at school, and I had just bought my first computer. Well, I tell a lie. Yeah, technically that's not a lie. It was my first computer that I bought, but my mum and dad bought me a Texas TI 1994A, which at that point it was utter shit because I only had one game for it. I had one game, which was a type in. It wasn't a type in. Well, you could have typed it in if you wanted. It was what do you call it? It was I got it mail order. I think it was Computing Video Games, and it was called. If anybody can find that game, I would be forever in your debt. It was called Core, and I think it had an exclamation mark, so it was Core, shouting Core, and yeah, you controlled. It was written in BASIC, and you controlled. I think it was the letter U. Yeah, it wasn't a graphic. It was the letter U you controlled, and you had to basically bypass all these seagulls, which were W's. No, they were V's. Yeah, I think they were V's. So you had to basically bypass these seagulls, and it scrolled like that. And I think you used ZX to move left and right. And then if you got to the bottom, you got to the core, and then there endeth the game. So you can imagine it was about as exciting as it sounds, i.e., not utter shit. Anyway, I'm kind of going off. I'm going off topic. So yeah, I had this Texas. You know what? I don't even know. I don't even know what the hell happened to it, because I mean, back then you couldn't have. Well, at least most people, you couldn't have. You couldn't have more than one machine because games were so expensive. Computers were so expensive. So yeah, if you had a machine and you wanted to upgrade or get another one, you had to sell what you had. I cannot for the life of me remember, because we're talking 1983. I don't know. It must have been an advert in the paper, because I mean, social media wasn't a thing. Yeah, I honestly cannot remember for the life of me what I did, what happened to my Texas. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So then, yeah, I think I must have. So when I started working part time, I've I got to know a couple of guys. I got to know a couple of people um, that had computers. So I'm trying to think of my feet here. Yeah, I got to know a couple of guys that had computers, and like they both a guy called Shug or Hugh, who very this is a bit of a what's the word, a curious link. My mate Hugh actually, or Shug as he was called, he was at university, and Texas Instruments, they had a competition to see what student could come up with the best invention. And he came up with a means of, the little oscilloscope that basically the heart rate monitor, it goes beep, beep, one of these things. He came up with a software solution that you could actually save that. You could save it as a file, so that when somebody says, "I wonder why that guy died," they could basically load up the image. I'd imagine it wasn't on a tape, and you could watch it back. So the job, the competition, he won it, and the prize was a job with Texas Instruments, and he was with the company for, I don't know, 30 odd years. I think he lives in India. He was working in America for a while, in Dallas, I think it was. Then he moved to India. I think he's still there, but he works for a different company. Anyway, again, I'm kind of going off topic. So anyway, Shug and Brian, they both had Commodore 64s, and I had Texas. And we got talking about computers, as you do, as I was collecting my shopping trolleys, because that was my job. And yeah, we're like comparing computers, and they were like, "Oh, the Commodore 64 is great," and I was aware of the Commodore 64, but I don't think I'd ever seen any games in it, but I was aware of it. I was aware that was the computer I wanted. Uh, oh, Ox, bloody hell, you're like the fucking Grim Reaper, I'm sure. Did you not tell me, who is it the last time you told me about? You told me about somebody passing away. Um, Meatloaf. Yeah, it was you that told me about Meatloaf. I love Depeche Mode. Sorry, I mean, I loved them that much that I didn't really know the names of them apart from Dave Gahan. What one is Fletch? Let me just. Sorry, I just need to. I need to just do a quick check. Actually, sorry, I'm just googling. I'm shit with names. Ah, right. That is a shame. God, he's only 60. That's very sad. Yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, evening, Matt. In fact, evening, Ox, evening, Joe, evening, Colin, and evening, Ben. Yeah, that's a sin. Like I said, massive fan of Depeche Mode. Such a massive fan that I don't actually know the names of people, but that doesn't mean that you're not a fan of them. That's sad. Anyway, back on track. Where was I? So Shug, and if you've just joined me, you'll need to watch this and catch up. I'm basically talking about my experiences of software piracy. So they told me, yeah, you need to get a Commodore 64, and I thought, right, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I must have sold my Texas because I couldn't afford to keep it, and I took out HP hire purchase to anybody that's under the age of 36. Took out a hire purchase, got my Commodore 64, and I got a couple of games. I bought 2 games. I could show you them, but I can't be asked. But they're basically over that. They're over that shoulder, kind of just behind that Star Wars thing. There is the little Star Wars toy thing. Um, got a couple of games which were pish. And then Brian told me, he says, oh, I've how many games have you got? And I'm like, 2. And he's like, I've got 70. And I'm like, 70 games? I'm like, Christ, you must be loaded. And he went, oh, they're piracy. They're pirate games. Now, I knew what a pirate was, but I'd never ever heard the term piracy in that forum before, because I just even in Shinobi, yeah, I just didn't. I'd never heard it used at all. And so yeah, they told me. He says, yeah, you can copy tapes. I'm like, how can you copy tapes? He says, you just like you can copy them, an audio tape. So anyway, Brian, I said to Brian, oh, you'll need to, can I get a copy of them? So he says, right, what I'll do is I'll come up to your house one night and you can get a copy. So he came up to my house and he brought up said C90, and we went through loading up various games. Let me think. There was one called, and Mad Commodore, he's old enough to remember, maybe Ox as well, a game called, it wasn't a game, it was called, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let me just to make this, I was going to say make this video more interesting. Maybe I should rephrase that. By the way, look at my t-shirt, guys. How cool is that? Got that in London. Yeah, that is awesome, eh? Yeah, make it mediocrely. Is mediocrely a word? I don't know. Interesting. Let me see if I can find it. One of the games that Brian had. Jesus, I have never even seen this game until. In fact, wait a minute. I'm going to let me have a wee look at the cover. There we are. Right, share video. No, I don't want to share a video, you twat. Share screen even. There we are. Yeah, there's the game. Dancing Feats. I don't actually know. I mean, you pick that up. You pick that up off the shelf, and you'd be like, "What is it?" I mean, it doesn't even tell you. Also available from Arctic Computing. Arcade games, adventure games, various utility programs. Unauthorized copying, lending, hiring is prohibited. But did I give a toss? Not at all. Yeah, Dancing Feats. God, you were obviously quite expert. You used to use 2CN to a backup board. I didn't even know that was a thing. So that was the game. That was one of the games. Excuse me. Let's load it. Let's give it a go. I do remember it at the time. It was shite. Alternate D. Hang on. It gets rid of that. You know what? It's mental. You know, it's one of these things where you've not heard or seen something for like 40 years and then you suddenly hear it and it just comes flooding back. That's what this game is. That is mental. I have not loaded this game for... Right, how the hell do you actually start the bloody thing? Christopher Chance. Right, let's give it a go. Choose base. Alright, so it's basically that tape. What do you call it? That, I can't even remember the name of it. The Delta loading thing, right? But not as good. So you can pick. Let's go for, since I'm a rocker, let's go for rock. Main menu. Come on, it's a bit unresponsive. Cool big win. Syncopate. Let's go for a bit of syncopation, I think. Whatever that is. And the style. Well, neither of them really work. Let's go for no. It's got to be blues, isn't it? You can see how limited this thing is. Choose tempo. Like my dad's first car, Allegro. And choose ending. Oh, it's got to be the Elvis. The Elvis, right? Okay. Right, and then F7 to begin. Ah, right, okay. So pressing up does that. Left does pressing, right, so up, right. So basically spinning the joystick around. It was basically a late synthesizer before Jeff Minter. Yeah, that was one of the games that was on Brian's C90. Can't remember anything else but the one, and this is I've told this story on many a time, and if not, sit back and let me tell you. Donkey Dong, what the hell? Yeah, he loaded this one. Where is it? Analog software. It's just called Kong, isn't it? He loaded this game, and I was that impressed with it. Yeah, I said to Brian, can you give me can I copy this tape? And he's like, oh, I have to go home now. And I'm like, I thought you were going to give me a copy of the tape. He went, no, I need to go home now. So he was going to leave. So he came up and basically waved all these free games in my face and then decided to piss off. So I said to him, look, can you load up this Kong? And this is it here. I'll let you see the cover, but Jesus, that's a bit scary. Look at it. I don't know. Oh, I've just realised he's got a barrel and she's waving. Oh, hi, hiya, hello. That is one ugly looking bloody monkey. Yeah, so this was the game that Brian loaded up, and because I knew if I switched the computer off, I would obviously lose the game. I left my computer on for I think 2 days without switching it off, just so I could play this game. Yeah, this is a piracy special, but I've not even got beyond the first bit of piracy. That's quite a nice picture. Anyway, my God, how many teleport? What? I'm actually tempted to turn all these on, unfreeze enemy. Yeah, let's leave these infinite lives on. 1, 2, 3, collision off, 4. So basically 1 to 0, and then QWERTY border color. The lifts only, right? Press space, space. My dad didn't actually have an Allegro, but I just used it for comedic effect. Right. There we go. Q. Right, jump to play. Right, let's try and play it rather than fanny about with the controls. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with his nose there. Yeah, this was a game that Brian loaded, and I knew that if I turned my computer off, for some reason the barrels, oh, arse biscuits. It's one of the most difficult Donkey Kongs you'll ever likely to play as well. That looked a bit dodgy, that. Oh, bollocks, come on. Get the bloody hammer. Jesus. Oh, that was skill. Oh, balls. Right, anyway, I digress. So, yeah, that was the game. So, Brian, he disappeared with C90, and in the process, I lost I lost the ability to copy the games. Then over the preceding, I don't know, few months, 6 months, whatever. I used to go up to Ray's computer shop. I used to buy all my games, and then John Menzies started stocking games. I used to buy games, and then when I first kind of got involved with piracy, I got to know about. In fact, it was Shug. If you've just joined the video, you need to rewind so you know who Shug is. Shug said to me, "There's a computer club at Inverarmond High School on a Wednesday." Now, I think it's something niggles me that it started at 6 o'clock. So I said to my mate Grant, "Yep, sorry, Ox, the new job's going great. Really not missing Matt at all." Nah, I'm only joking, buddy. No, it's been hard. It's obviously brand new job. It's completely different from what I was doing before. Obviously new skills to learn, trying to learn the new systems. It's totally different from what I was doing before. So I do feel a wee bit like a fish out of water. I did get a new car today, a company car, which is really nice. So that's kind of cheered me up a wee bit. But yeah, no, the job's going really well, and I don't think I'm going to regret leaving my last job. I think this job's going to be good. From what I gather, it's a chilled out office. It actually does remind me of The Office with Ricky Gervais with all the different characters. Kind of similar to that. But and I'm not Ricky Gervais, by the way, you cheeky bastards. But yeah, going well. Anyway, back to where we were, computer club. So this computer club, it was in Inverarmond High School, and I told my mate Grant he had a Spectrum, and I had my C64. So we used to go up to this computer club every week, and it's mental when I think now how lazy kids are. They want evening, Craig. How are you, mate? When you think how lazy kids are nowadays, they want lifts everywhere. We used to walk. You know what I'm going to do? Sorry, I actually want to, because I keep saying, oh, it were like 5 miles. I want to actually, let's see, Google Maps. I want to actually put in how far it was. Right, to Garston. We used to walk from my house up to this school. Let's see, Inverarmond. There we go, Community High School. Let's see how far it was. Right, walking. There you go. Right, yeah, it's not that far. It was 1.6 miles used to walk. Now you're probably thinking that's not far, main meister. But then hear me out. We used to have to carry our computers, and sometimes, well, I can still see my mate. He used to Matt. Christ, I'm looking at the comments there. He used to put his Spectrum in all his games, and did he have a TV? And he used to put it into this big bloody suitcase, and he used to carry it up. And I had my I don't know what I had mine in. I had mine in a sports bag, I think it was. And I had my disk drive, and I had my C64, and you know, you've probably seen the size of the 1541 disk drive. It's literally like this. It's like the size of a small car, and it's equally as heavy. So I used to carry the disk drive, my C64, my tape deck, all my games, and yeah, I would carry. And sometimes we used to have to carry TVs, and you know that was 1.6 miles. So yeah, we used to have to carry that. We'd get to the computer club. When we got there, I was part of the elite because I had a Commodore 64. My mate Grant, he was part of the snotty-nosed Spectrum owners, because all the young kids had Spectrums and all the older kids and spoilt kids had Commodore 64. So we never, the two never crossed. So he would go away, and it was, I can remember it was in the science lab, So you had these big labs, and you had the Bunsen burners and all that kind of stuff. You know, you had a little tap that you connected the Bunsen burner to. So it was in the science lab. That's where this computer club was. And so Grant would go away, and he would go off with his minions. And the thing is, Grant was we were kind of gods because we were old. We were like 17, and other kids were all snotty nosed kids. And it was basically copying games. There was a guy, John. Now, he actually, John Wallace, if I remember rightly, he actually became part of, it was a cracking group. I don't mean good, I mean cracking group, as in piracy group. He became part of a cracking group called Red Baron. I do remember some games being copied with Red Baron. I can't remember what ones offhand, but yeah, Red Baron was John ended up kind of working for them, whatever you want. John, I don't know. I mean, we're talking 85, 84, 85. John had connections to kind of copying, so he used to come to the club with all the latest games. I mean, I'm trying to think of stuff like is it Champion? Oh, what's it called? By Epix. It's a wrestling game. I can't remember what it's called. There was what do you call it? Fight Night on the C64. There was loads of American games. John used to. I would load up a tape that I had just bought out of John Menzies, and he would load up this disc-based American game. So of course we all had to kind of. I mean, John and I got on really well, and he always used to let me copy. Is it Championship Wrestling, something like that? So John used to let me copy all his discs, which was really good of him. And then we used to go up to the canteen, get chips and juice. Yeah, my commiserations, Craig. Obviously, if you'd been there, mate, you'd have literally been copying your own games. Yeah, so we'd go and get chips, and then we'd come back down, and yeah, all the little kids, they were quite happy to let us. I suppose we we didn't bully them, but yeah, we were the adults. We were in charge, and they were like, yeah, they always let us say. But when I actually think back, we're probably quite mean because we would say to them, "Oh, can I get a loan? Can I borrow your tape, mate, and I can copy it?" And they would be, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." And then they would go, "Oh, can I get a copy of that disc?" You'd like, "Piss off, bugger off, leave us alone." So yeah, at the end of the night, yeah, there was never any Amstrads weren't really a thing. I never saw anybody with an Amstrad. There was no BBC people at all. There was one guy that used to take along his Atari. I think it was his Atari X800 XL, and he was quite an unfortunate person. He obviously had some sort of illness that made his like eye kind of had fallen in his face. He was kind of quite disfigured looking, very very unfortunate looking. He was a bit older than us. Thing was, he was an absolute cunt. I mean, he really was. He was nasty. You would see him, you would speak to him, and he would kind of tell you to f off. Thing is, nobody went near him because I don't know why he even went to the club. He used to go along to the club. He would take his Atari XL along, and nobody else had an Atari, and he would sit and play his own games. He would load up things like Stealth and what else? The Eidolon, not the Eidolon. The Eidolon, yeah, the Eidolon with by whatever it is, Activision. And yeah, he wasn't a very pleasant person, probably because he got picked on at school just because of his kind of physical appearance. So that was the computer club. So that was the early days of computers. And my mate Shug, I used to buy. I mean, I used to spend a shitload of money. I was working. I was working part time in a cocktail bar, and that's when I met you. No, I was working in a supermarket, and I used to get about £12.50 a week. And I would. The shop used to close at 5 o'clock, and Ray's computer shop closed at 5:30. and depending, and if I kind of timed it right, I could get out onto my moped, get up to the computer shop, and sometimes it was open, sometimes it was closed, because I think the guy, Ray, that had the computer shop, it was like the size of a small room, and so if there was nobody about, no customers were about, then he would close early. So sometimes I would get up there, I would get the latest Zap. I'd think, right, I'm going to buy Waffle Exploding Fist, and I would get up there and I'd go to try the door, and the bloody door was locked, and I was gutted because that was me. I had to then wait another week before I could buy anything, because I always wanted to have a brand new game for a Saturday to play. So I bought a lot of games, and then obviously John Menzies started stocking them, and I used to buy disc games, and my mate Shug, that I've been talking about, he used to copy them. It used to kind of annoy me. He used to come up to my house and he would copy my games. And on occasions, what was the game that he brought up? I always remember him bringing up Drop Zone and being blown away. His mate was called the Jammy. I remember that, yeah. Shugging Jammy. So yeah, we used to copy games. So that was kind of the 8-bit era. I used to get my games from the computer club, and that was kind of it. My mate Grant had a Spectrum, and one of my other mates, Grant, he used to have a Commodore 64 as well, and we used to kind of swap games. But that was kind of 8-bit. Moving on to the 16-bit, I got an Atari ST. First game was a game called TNT. Let's see if I can load it. Do you want to see TNT? Yeah, let's load it up. Now you can't. I don't think I can. It's an annoying one because you've got to unplug the mouse or something to get that to work. Let me see if I can even just bring a screenshot of the game up. It was Ox, yeah. It was a commando type game. Where is it? Listen, Ox, just when I've got you on, you know how when you install a game base, it will call itself. The ST one is called Atari ST. Can you easily change the name? Because some of them, like, I don't know. Can you change it? Could you call that? See, I've got one here called. The Commodore 64 one is called CBC _ V17. Could I easily rename that Commodore 64 V17, or is that a palaver? I did try to just rename the file and it didn't work. Let me know if you can do that. Matt used to work in John Menzies. Yeah, great shop. Long gone, unfortunately. Right, where am I? Atari ST. I'm going to let you see TNT. Listen, thanks everybody for joining me. If you're tuning in to hear some waffle, then you've come to the right place. I only announced about half an hour before. You can change the directory name. So I'm sure I tried that. So just the data, so you can literally just change the database name, and then the actual. So you rename the directory, and then you rename the thing. I'll need to give that a go. I'm sure I did try that and I couldn't get it working. Anyway, right, TNT, where are we? There we are. Add to stream. Right, yeah, that was well, that doesn't give you any indication of the game at all. Is there a third? Yeah, there we go. Can you see that? Yeah, that's as big as it can go, said the bishop to the nun. Anyway, yeah, it was a commando style game, and it looked great. Right, there's not any other screenshots. The second level in particular was really good. Yes, you can change the directory name, but you also have to change. Okay, I'll give that a go. Thanks, Ox. So yeah, that was TNT. Had that, and what we used to do is because the games are obviously so expensive. We'll just remove that again. Because the games are obviously so expensive. Well, I don't know why I'm saying that. I used to buy, because the games are so expensive, I used to buy, at this point, I was working full time for a construction company. I was working in the wages department. I could still remember it. 2248 was my annual salary, £2,248. I think I used to get, it was about £190 before deductions, and I had to give my mum, I think it was about 70 quid or something. But, you know, it seemed like a huge amount of money compared to my £12.50. So, yeah, I used to buy one game a month, and back then it was literally just looking at the screenshots and thinking, oh, that looks good. And my mate Ian, evening Kenny, how are you, mate? My mate Ian and Kenny as well. Kenny, he was part of the old piracy. In fact, yeah, Kenny had a Commodore 64, and he used to pirate my games, and I would pirate his games. We got in fact, it was Kenny and I actually. I can distinctly remember. We used to go to college in a place called Bathgate, and we were doing it was a national certificate in business studies. And I can always remember looking at a magazine. I don't know what it was. I think it might have been Computer and Video Games or something else. And they were talking about this Atari ST, and we're like, "Oh, that's going to be good." Evening, Dave. And yeah, it was this supercomputer. I didn't know, when people say 16-bit, I didn't know what the hell 16-bit was. And people told me that my Commodore was 8-bit, and therefore a 16-bit was twice as powerful. That's all I knew. But we started seeing pictures, started seeing screenshots of games, and I can always remember seeing it was International Karate, but it's not the International Karate that people remember. I wonder if I can find it. I'm sure it still does exist. Let's see, International Karate. Is this going to be the one? Has it not got no, it's not got any. It's not got a picture. Oh, hang on, International. Ah, there we go. Yeah, that is exactly it. Right, yeah, let me just share my screen again. Add to stream. Right, that's the International Karate that everybody remembers. The Archer McLean one. But this one here, that was the one. So when did that one come out? 80. Yeah, that one came out in 1988, and this one here came out in 1986. Now, you're probably looking at that thinking, yeah, that's not that impressive. You need to understand, you know, going from a Commodore 64 to that just looked phenomenal. And I can always remember seeing that in a magazine. And I remember talking to Kenny, and there was another guy, I can't remember what his name was, and we were talking about computers. Like, oh, that looks great. And then I told my mate Ian, and he was like, oh, because Ian, he had an Electron. So, yeah. And yeah, he had an Electron. And no, in fact, yeah, he had an Electron, and then he also had an Auric, but I think he'd sold his Auric to get an Electron. Now, I would say that's like selling your Amiga to go and get a ZX81. It was like he'd done it arse for elbow, back to front. So I told Ian about this, you know, because Ian started working, because Kenny, Axeman 3D, he worked in the same company as myself, a construction company, and my mate Ian, he also worked in the same company. So we all got to kind of together through computers. So anyway, we were all talking about, yeah, this ST, that would be great. It must be fantastic to buy one. And then I remember I was at the pub in Livingston called the Paraffin Lamp, which is still there. And Ian said to me, by the way, we used to take it in turns. It was weird. We used to take it in turns. We'd go to the pub on a Friday, and then he would stay at my bit, and then the next week I would stay at his bit. For whatever reason, we were at this pub, but we're going back to his bit. So we did that. I think his dad picked us up or something, and he says, "I've got this surprise. You're going to love this." And he says, "Right, shut your eyes." And I'm like, "What the hell's coming up here?" And opened my eyes, and there was an Atari ST running Arkanoid. Now, again, looking at Arkanoid now, you're thinking, yeah, it's not that impressive. But again, going from an 8-bit machine to Arc, there we go, to this, there it's there. This was like, bloody hell, that is arcade. I mean, I'd never seen this in arcade, but it was just like it went from there to there. It was like, wow. So yeah, Ian got in first. He got his Atari ST. Then I think Kenny and I think we both got our. Did you get your ST from Ray's computer shop as well, Kenny? I'm sure you did. You had to. It was hire purchase, and I'm sure I had to sell my Commodore 64. Evening, Andy. How are you, buddy? I'm good, mate. I hope you're well. I had to sell my Commodore 64. Now, I know you're thinking, yeah, you should have kept it. You know, back then, I wasn't interested in bloody keeping. Why would I want to keep an old computer when I can get a spankingly new 16-bit, doubly powerful computer? So I think I sold my C64 with 1541 disk drive, tape deck, freeze frame, numerous discs, hundreds of tapes, full set of Zap 64s, you name it. I had the full shooting match, and I think I sold it for £100. In fact, I can always remember, and I'm digressing again. My mate Grant, who had the Commodore 64, not the Spectrum Grant, the other Grant, he used to do this community watch thing. He was basically paid to patrol the streets. It was one of these stupid things that the council came up with to reduce crime. Let's not bother recruiting more police. Let's pay the minimum wage to some delinquents, and they'll do it. So Grant used to walk about. He used to walk about the streets with a torch and a high vis jacket, and that was it. He was the man. He was the law. He was the Judge Dredd of Livingston. And he used to, I mean, he did no work at all. He used to come into my house when he was maybe working. He would play the computer and whatever. And he turned up with this guy, his workmate. And I happened to mention that I was selling my Commodore 64. And this guy goes, oh, could I buy it off you? I went, yeah, £100. And he went, well, I don't actually have £100. Could I give you, I think it was £10 a week? I'm right, okay, that's fine. Right, okay, £10 a week. So I gave him it rather stupidly, rather than waiting for him to pay it all. I gave him it, and then he was to pay me £10 a week. I think he got to £20, and then he just never bothered giving me any more money. And I ended up getting my dad to go up to. We went up to his house and we demanded it back. And not to be fair, but his mum. I think his mum let us go up to his bedroom. It was a bit weird when I think about it. I'm sure his mum let us go up to his bedroom, and we took all the equipment out, and I never gave him the £20 that he'd given me. So anyway, that was the history of my Commodore 64. So Kenny and I, and we all got our Atari STs. I put the £100 towards the Atari ST, and I was paying it up. I was paying it up X amount per month. It was quite a lot of money. I mean, I was on just over £2,000 a year, and I was getting about 109. I think I was getting about £200 a month. And then when I took off the £100 that my mum was wanting, I didn't have an awful lot of money left over. So I was paying that. So anyway, we all took turns. We bought games. I mean, another game that I bought was Barbarian by Psygnosis Software. Bought Arkanoid. Another game that Ian had, which is absolutely shite. Let me just find it. What the hell is it called? Yeah, and I have done I did do a look at this game. Let me just find add to stream. There we go. Prohibition. Let's give it a go. Prohibition it sounds great in theory. Look at that. That brings back memories. There you go. It's got horrible music. It's chiptune music to not die for.
Prohibition.
Now, when I got my Atari ST, I was delighted, and then this was the music that I was getting on my ST. Now, going from monitoring the run in the C64 and Commando to this was like a massive downways step. Anyway, this game, the idea is, there we go, dead. Oh, there he's there. The problem with this game is it's the scrolling. Where the hell is it? The scrolling is so fast. Oh, bugger off. Bugger off. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's enough of that. Right, let's come out of that. Quit. Right, get that back again. So yeah, that was another game that Ian bought, and that was shite. So yeah, and then we started buying Atari ST magazines, and at the back there was always these copy discs. Now I think Matt actually might have mentioned the name of the copying device that I used to use. Fast copy. I think that might have been right, Matt. I think it might have been that one. Yeah, we it was about 60 quid. So we chipped in the money and we bought this this copy, and yeah, it was fast copy, and we started copying discs. But again, we were only 50% bad, because what we then decided to do was we would collectively buy a game and copy it, and we would take turns to keep the original. So we'd buy a game, we would pick a game that we want, and we would both chip in for it, and Ian would keep it he would keep that game, and then next month we'd get another game, copy it, I would keep it. But very quickly, I'm talking probably less than a year, I decided the Commodore Amiga was on the radar. I always remember the first time I became aware of the Amiga was Jeff Minter did a little column in it was one of these really kind of dull magazines. I don't know what the hell it was called, Computer Weekly or some pish like that. He was talking about he'd just got this Amiga. I think it must have been the Amiga 1000, and he was going on about how he had this arcade perfect Marble Madness, and there was a photograph of it, and it was hard to put over just how impressive this looked. It was stunning looking apps. I mean, even now I think Marble Madness on the Amiga. I mean, let's shall we load it up? Yeah, let's try and find it. Marble Madness was absolutely stunning. For a, it blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. So at that point, we're like, I think Kenny was the same. Like, yeah, we need to get an Amiga, but none of us could afford it, because it was still, I don't know how much it was. It was still a lot of money. So we had to kind of make do. We couldn't just go out and buy the. We couldn't just go out and buy the thing. Oh, hang on a second. Wait a minute. Sorry, I just want to. I'll make that so you can actually see it. There we go. Yeah, we none of us could afford an Amiga. We didn't have a spare 400 quid kicking about, because you need to remember at that point we were buying. Well, it was more than it was 2 months' salary for me, Kenny. You might have gone on to better money at that point with BT, but I was still working at Tarmac and on shit money. Let's just load this up. What was I talking about? So yeah, we all harked after an Amiga, but we couldn't get it. And then I saw an advert, and again it was an Amiga. It was in a magazine of some sort, and it was Portobello computers. I don't know if Alan Brown's in this, if he's watching this tonight. I don't know if Alan remembers that shop. I don't know, Kenny. Where did you get your Amiga about? So anyway, they were offering a trade-in for the Atari ST. So that was it. Right, hang on. I'm going to share the screen for 2 ticks just to let you see this. You're probably thinking that looks shite, Meister, but trust me. There we go. You got 2 of them from Raids. Yeah. That's the thing though. That was the only place that sold them. Got to love that sound, eh? Right, and the mouse is not working. But that sound is bloody impressive. Right, I can't play it. I can't play it. There you go. So that was the game that made me want to get an Amiga. Remove. There we are. Kenny, I bought a small one, then sold it and bought the bigger version. What was that? Sorry, what are you talking about? You're not talking about. Did you buy the Amiga 600? No, you had. Did you? You had the Amiga 500 as well, didn't you? Yeah. So anyway, Ian and I saw this advert and we thought, like, that's it. We're going to buy. We're going to go and get this. So we jumped in the car, went through to Portobello, and we traded in our Atari STs. I think we both had. I think Kenny was the same. ST-FM, which was the one with the built-in modulator, the built-in power pack, and all this. And that's, in fact, no, I've got it. I've got it. I can't be arsed. picking it up. I've got the 1040, which was the one with more memory, but I couldn't afford that. So anyway, yeah, we went through to the computer shop, traded it in, got our Amigas. So yeah, what was the game that I got with it? I'm bloody trying to remember. What game did I? You know what? I think I'm talking shit. I think my memory is starting to deceive me. The Atari ST, I bought TNT, and Amiga. I think the first game I got in Amiga was Barbarian, or was it? I honestly can't remember. You know, I can't remember what game I had in Amiga. That's weird. So anyway, yeah, again, piracy wasn't a thing. I wasn't aware of piracy other than, you know, swapping games with your mates, pirating each other's games. There wasn't anywhere that we could go and buy games cheap that we were aware of. So yeah, got the Amiga. Excuse me. And again, we used to take it in turns. Used to take it in turns to buy the game. In fact, I shouldn't have closed that down. I'll load it up just now so I can let you see something else. And yeah, we thought, right, what we need to do is, by this point, other places were selling games. You could go to Virgin Megastore. That was, yeah, LFC, sorry, but it was Barbarian. It was the what do you call it? The Psygnosis one that I bought, not the Palace Software one, which was a lot better. What the hell was I talking about there? Yeah, I was going to let you see. What was I going to let you see? I can't even bloody remember. I've completely forgot my train of thought. I can't remember what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I've just loaded the wrong bloody game. Wait a minute. Yeah. So anyway, we're thinking, right, what game should we buy? So I was aware of a certain game called Street Fighter. Now we used to Kenny and myself and Ian, and in fact I don't think Ian went that often. Kenny and I used to get the oh Christ, that's awfully loud. Hang on, I know you can't see it, but you'll see it in a second. Turn that down. Just let you see this. There we go. Yeah, Street Fighter. Kenny and I used to get the bus. We used to get the bus into Edinburgh, Princess Street, and for two reasons. There was two reasons that we used to go. One is because it had a McDonald's. Now, this was the first McDonald's that I was aware of in Scotland. There was probably a McDonald's in Glasgow, but coming from the east side or central Scotland without a car, even if we did have a car, which we did have a car eventually, we never went to Glasgow. So Glasgow was like a foreign country to us back then. So Kenny and I used to get the bus into Edinburgh, go to McDonald's, get a cheeseburger, whatever it was. There was no such thing as a Big Mac or any of that bollocks back then. And then, more importantly, we'd go down to LA's, which was an arcade. It wasn't the biggest arcade in the world. It was kind of in two levels. I remember you kind of went in, and to the right it was kind of flat. I can remember hard driving being in the corner. And if you went to the left, you went up a couple of steps, and they had a kind of raised area. And it had, I'll say one thing about it, whilst it wasn't big, it did have a lot of, it managed to pack in a lot of machines for quite a small kind of footprint. I mean, I'm trying to think, Kenny, what games did they have? I remember, the games that I remember they had APB, they had, was it Zybots, they had Hard Driving, they had Street Fighters, they had, what's that, the name of that game? Something Heat. Can't remember. It's an F1 game. They had all the games. They also had Street Fighter, not the second one. I think they had that eventually, but they had the original Street Fighter, which had pads, which you basically punched, and it was awful. But we didn't know that. So of course, this came out. Spy Hunter. I remember Spy Hunter. Yeah, this came out. They also had Tiger Heli. I remember playing that quite a lot. This came out, and Ian and I thought, let's get this. So we went into Edinburgh, and we handed over, I don't know how much it was, 40 quid or something. And yep, we thought it looks awesome. Looks fantastic. Got home. They also had WEC Le Mans. They also had, I think they had, yeah, at the back, on the very, very back, they had, or was it up the back? I can't remember. They had Outrun, they had Space Harrier. So I'm digressing again. I'm getting distracted with Kenny. So anyway, we bought this game, rushed home, and I said to Ian, right, you go and put the kettle on, I'll load up this. And I loaded it up, and I shit you not, by the time Ian came back, I had completed it. And it is the biggest pile of wank ever. I mean, look at it. Look at the scrolling. It's absolutely diabolical. Jesus, it is awful. So we bought that, we copied it, and we started buying a few other games. Then Grant, the one with the Commodore 64, not the one with the Spectrum, came down to my house one night and he said, "Oh, by the way, there's I know a guy that's got shitloads of games." I'm like, yeah. Who is he? And it was this wee guy. Now, Kenny will remember him. He was called Craig. Now, this would be wrong if you think about it now, but we were like 21, 22, and Craig was probably about 10, 11 years old. But for whatever reason, I think, you know what it was? His dad. I'm sure his dad was into computers. That was what they called. Oh, he's into computers. His dad was into computers. He had a job. What do you call it, in computers? And I'm sure his dad he had contacts, and he used to get copies of all the latest games. So of course we got in cahoots with this wee guy, and at first we used to go along to his house, and you'd have your big massive pile of blank discs, and 50 discs, and we used to go along, and We'd say, "Aye, Craig, it's Craig in, yeah, in you come." And we would go into his bedroom, and he would try and make small talk with us, and we were interested in doing was copying his discs, which we did. But it wasn't long before he cottoned on. So then, what he would say to us was, he used to. I would phone him and say, hi, Craig. What you up to tonight? I was just wondering if you wanted me to come up and we can play the computer. You copy games. So we'd do that, but he cottoned on to that, and he used to say, "What games have you got?" Now, the only games that we had was the games that he'd given us. So we still had to go and buy games. And then, so you'd buy a game. So yeah, we'd say, "Yep, we've got Street Fighter," and he'd be like, "Oh, I've got that game." So that was it. He wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in letting us copy his games. And then eventually, yeah, he kind of cottoned on. He's like, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm giving you all these games, and you're not giving me anything." So that eventually dried up. However, I can't remember the timelines, whatever. He Grant, Commodore 64 Grant, phoned me up one day and said, "By the way, Ingleston Market sell games." Now, Ingleston Market, Kenny will know this one. I don't know if Alan Brown's in tonight. Alan, you in? Ingleston Market was at that point, I think it was the biggest open air market in Europe. And it was on just the outskirts of Edinburgh, just before Edinburgh Airport on the left hand side. And they basically, I mean, I think back in the day, they sold things like food and meat. There was always a guy with a van selling bagfuls of meat. You could get like £4 of beef and mince and steak and sausages for like £4. And it was a typical Del Boy kind of marketplaces. So they sold food. They sold I think they sold counterfeit bloody clothes. So you could go along there and you could buy a leather jacket for like £20, whereas the real thing would cost £100. But then, of course, when computers came along, they quickly cottoned on. So anyway, we went along Ingleston Market, and there was a guy selling computer copied games, and I can't remember how much. I think they were like £5 each, £5 for a disc. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's a shitload of money for a floppy disk. But what you need to remember is we had just you would have to pay. I think it was maybe £24.99, £30 for a game. So getting a game for £5. So in other words, for £25 you could get 5 games, and your mate could get 5 games, which basically meant for £25 you were getting 10 games, which was great. Obviously, it was per disc. So if you got a two-player, not a two-player, if you got a 2-disc game, it was a tenner. I don't think they did. They didn't give you it for any less. So, and it was a guy called Brian. Brian, I can still remember this. Brian came from Ayr. He was an ex-convict. He'd been in jail. You could tell he had been in jail. He had kind of pockmarked face and scars on his face. And his son, who was apparently a trainee QS, and I always thought it was a bit weird that his son, who was a trainee QS, was selling dodgy games. And thing is, as he grew in popularity, I mean, it got to a point where people were queuing up. It was so blatant, the piracy. They they never actually had blank discs on a table. It was like one of these trestle tables. It was like a wallpaper paste table. All they had was a blue folder with Polly Pockets in, and a list of games, handwritten. I think eventually became typed. Handwritten games, and you would open up and go, "Can I get Street Fighter 2, Populous, and Forbidden, the whatever it is?" Yeah, that'll be £25. So we'd go along every Sunday. As things started to grow, as the queues got bigger, people started to software companies like Fast and all that. They were all kind of coming out. The police became aware of the piracy, and on the odd occasion, you would go along on a Sunday and Brian was nowhere to be seen. And then you'd go back the next week and he'd be back and it'd be like, yeah, the effing police got me. They took all my discs, so they maybe confiscated 1,000 discs. And then the next week he was back again with all these copied games. I don't think the police had any powers. I think all they could really do was confiscate. The police probably didn't really fully understand what it was they were actually doing, because I mean, computer games at that point. Have you seen my T-shirt, by the way, folks? How cool is that? Yep, there you go. Yeah, they probably didn't have any idea what they were really confiscating. Yeah, they were probably told, you need to go in, get rid of this guy's shite, and then that's it. So anyway, Brian was back there the following week, and then things started to get a wee bit more elaborate because the crowds were building up. People got to know about it. He, he used to put, instead of having the blue folders on the table, he used to put a couple of like copied a couple of original games, and they were usually it stood out like a sore thumb because they were old games, really old games. You have a couple of 3 or 4 boxed old games, and then you said, "Have you got Street Fighter 2?" Yep, and he would take a note of it, and then 5 minutes later he'd give you it. So that was how it was, and then it went a stage further. It got to a point where the way the market was, as you're walking up, you had stalls on either side. So the stall on the left, you'd have all these stalls. At the back of that stall was stalls facing the other way. So it's basically 2 stalls bolted on, one faced that way and one faced the other way, like that. So there's a gap in between. So what Brian used to do was you had to go behind the stalls, basically go behind the polythene, nobody could see you, and you would stand there. You would put your order in, and you would put your order in, and then you would what do you call it? Wait on your disc getting copied. They used to have discs, but then because it was getting a bit cleverer, they used to keep the discs in the car. I'm trying to think this. I mean, this was '94. I don't know how it worked. I think he would give the order to young Brian, cute quantity surveyor Brian. He would go to the car and come back and whatever it was. It got to a point. It became a family business. I mean, he's Brian's son, Brian, young Brian. I think that's what we call him, young Brian. And then his other son, who was like, they all looked the same, but a bit younger. There was younger Brian. There was his brother. There was young Brian, and there was another guy who was his brother. He was a bit younger, and I'm sure his mum used to appear sometimes. But and this was always a bit of a bonus. Brian's daughter used to go along as well, and she was bloody gorgeous. She was absolutely gorgeous. I fancied her like rotten. Long dark hair, kind of Spanishy looking. She was beautiful, but you didn't cross over because Brian would basically have taken you round the back and cut your throat. You didn't mess with him. So that was how it became. So that was Amiga, and I said, yeah, we used to go along, and I mean, Ox is mentioning there that it cost him a fortune. I spent an absolute fortune on. I would hate to think how much I actually spent on Amiga games. It was just absolutely insane. So that was Amiga. Then I went on to the PC, and then latterly like the PlayStation. Now both of them were the same. Got my PC, and again, you bought. People couldn't copy CDs. Of course you couldn't. So you would buy. I used to go to Virgin Megastore, buy buy my games, and then you would buy your games, and you would buy like Amiga format. They would give you a disc, a CD, and you could download, and you couldn't download. That was before the internet. They would put like shareware versions of Doom and that. So you used to basically get your games from these discs and buying games. And then Grant, Commodore 64 Grant, said to me, by the way, you can get copied games at the market from Brian, funnily enough. So we went along, and yeah, there it was. Now, it was, it's mental when you think about it. You didn't, these were games, I don't recall buying any, I don't recall buying any, what do you call it, floppy games on Pirate. I mean, we had them because I got my PC. My mate Grant, he was the first one that I remember got a PC, and he had quite a collection of games. So when I got my PC, and then I know Kenny got his PC, we all kind of changed at the same time. We all had Commodore 64s. Then we all got Amigas, Atari STs, then Amigas, then because it was in your interest basically to have the same computer as everybody else because you got all these games. So we all got a PC, and yeah, you went to the Ingleston market, and you didn't buy a CD with a single game in it. They used to have like a compilation CD. Now it sounds, it doesn't sound impressive, but I mean, what does the CD hold? Was it 740 meg or something? I don't know, something like that. 740 meg. Back then, these compilation discs, they would have something like 20 games on them. They were all like zipped and RAR'd and all that kind of stuff. And when you put it in, you loaded it, there was always a menu, and it always had some really irritating music. And you just picked what one you wanted, like number 2, Duke Nukem, and it would unrar them all, and it would expand, and you would have this game, and then you'd have to copy the crack across. And excuse me, I'm just going to get a quick drink of water. I've drunk all my Lucozade, and I've got one little sip left. Hang on. And the funny thing was, I mean, there's a whole video in this thing on its own. The compilations, there was various cracking groups. So cracking groups were around at the C64, they were around the Amiga, and they were around the PC. You had all these cracking groups, and they used to release their own compilation things. And the only one I can remember, and it used to annoy me because the thing was just so irritating, was Mr. Blobby. If you're not from the UK, Mr. Blobby was this ridiculous character that appeared in this really annoying Saturday night TV thing hosted by a guy called Noel Edmonds. And Mr. Blobby it was like your Ant and Dec shite of the 80s or 90s, I should say, because we're into kind of 95, 96. Yeah, so that was what do you call it? You had Mr. Blobby discs, and again you had about 20 games in it, and it was a bit like a lucky bag. If you don't know what a lucky bag was, go and ask your granny. A lucky bag was a bag you got did you get a cartoon strip in it? I don't know. You got various wee horrible sweets. Evening, Adam. How are you, mate? How are you, buddy? I've not seen you for a while, man. I hope you're good. Adam's a massive Amiga fan, as you can probably tell. We're just talking about piracy, Adam. Hang on, I'm just going to open these curtains or open the blinds a wee bit so you can see me again. There you go. What was I talking about? Yeah, the lucky bag. You got all these horrible little sweets, and Mr. Blobby CDs were basically the lucky bag of software. You would go to the market, and it would say Mr. Blobby 32, and it would list all the stuff that was on the disc. And you bought it. I mean, I don't know how much it was. I think it was maybe, I don't know how much were these piracy discs. £10. I think they might have been a tenner. Don't think they were any more than that. And you would buy it. So even buying it just for like one game was worth it. But you always got a lot of games, and you always got things like what else you had, like Auto Root and I don't know, Deluxe Paint 9 and all this kind of bollocks. You had all this software onto this one disc. And so yeah, that was it. I can't remember. Adam, can you remember any other compilation discs This is Mr. Blobby. There was loads of them. They all had their own names, and yeah, they were great. So that was the PCs. That was the PCs. We used to buy them. It became, the thing is, it became a complete and utter obsession with games. It wasn't like you really played them. You just you wanted to have everything. I wanted every single game. It was like that with Amiga. I wanted to have every single game, even games I had no intention of playing, even stuff like, I don't know, Secret of Monkey Island and all that kind of stuff. You just wanted to have, it all on your cassette, your little disc boxes, and you'd flick through. I used to be a bit OCD. I had them all in alphabetical order, and you'd flick through. Oh, play Jimmy White's Snooker, whatever. But so anyway, yeah, that was the pirate games on the PC, and that went for quite a number of years. But when it changed, it all changed. I don't know. For me, it changed probably 2000, I think. And it was due to one thing, the internet, or more specifically, broadband. When my dad, God rest his soul, he's been gone a few years now. He was the original Silver Surfer. Never mind your Marvel comics bollocks. My dad was a Silver Surfer. He was into his computer as an old guy. He was the first person I knew to get broadband. It was with a company called Telly West, which I think became Sky. I can't remember, or Virgin. Yeah, I think it was Virgin. And my dad was on a whopping, I think it was a 25 meg speed. It basically equated to about, I don't know, what would that be? Was it maybe half a megasecond, something like that? I can't remember exactly. I can't remember exactly the speed, but yeah, it was like 10 times faster. You'd gone from like 2K. Yeah, no, it wasn't. I'm talking shite. It wasn't a meg. It was K. You're maybe getting about 20K per second download. So it doesn't sound like much at all, but it was 10 times quicker than what we had. So anyway, yeah, the internet came along, and it wasn't particularly easy finding or maybe it was, but yeah, you could Google it, and there was all these kind of piracy sites. In fact, what the hell was it called again? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Oh, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, so a thing called news groups came along. Now they do still exist. And news groups it's a kind of weird thing. It's just a collection of files. It's a collection of zipped files. That was where you went to for your adult entertainment or games and music, MP3s and that kind of stuff. So I joined one called Easy News, and it's still going to this day. I've not used it for a long, long time. But Easy News, I think it was like 15 quid a month, and it gave you, I can't remember what it would be. Was it maybe, I don't know, 5 gig download a month, something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this was basically the way you got software. You could just download, you could just type it in, I don't know, I'm Doom 2. There you go, and you'd have like 5 lines of Doom, one file, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just click them all, download them, and then if you were lucky, it would all unzip. Even in Dell, it would all unzip. Games Copy World, that's the one, Dell. I'm going to do a quick search for that just now. Games Copy World, let's have a wee look. Yeah, you would download all the Games Copy World. I'm sure it's still Copy World. Games Copy World, there we are. Fantastic. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's Games Copy World. What that basically did was you could copy your mate's PC game, but when you try to run it, it would say, please insert disk. But this here, you could go to the game index, and you could, I can't even believe this is still a thing. That is mental. You could see that, yep, I've just downloaded 007 Legends. Click in that, and you would download one of these, and it would basically, it would be called no CD, and it would basically allow you to, it wouldn't ask for the CD. So that was how you managed it. But I think you could even, what do you call it? I think you could even install the game from your mate's disc and then just use the no CD crack. So that's what we did. And so, of course, when that came along, yeah, Newsbin, that was it. I remember that, Adam. Newsbin used to tell you, it used to tell you where all the latest games were. You could, it would, and I think it used to tell you, the name of the files, what you had to get. And then what would happen is, as games became more elaborate, they were taking up full CDs. So that was like 700 meg, which was a huge amount. It was an elephantine amount of memory or space. You would download, it would be like 52 RARs. You would download them all, and then you would unzip it, and then it would come up, file 22 missing. And it's like bollocks. And you go back in, file 22 is missing. So that was you were screwed. Then a thing, and I still don't really understand it, and even in Collins just mentioned that a thing called par files came along. Colin's going to tell me what par stands for. And basically these were little files. Now, Dale Boy did try to explain to me what they were, but I'm not going to bore you with that for this video. Par files, you would maybe get 3 or 4 par files, and you would download them, and then what you would do is you would like run them. There was a par program, whatever the hell it is. You would run them, and what it would do is it would run through all the files. It would check, it would go zip 1, zip 2, or there were rar 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would run through all the files, and then when it got to the end, it would then start to rebuild the missing ones. And I never really understood how that works. It's like, how can it get it? Where does it get the information for? And it would rebuild files, but you had to have, it depends how many. If you were missing like 5 RAR files, you maybe needed 10 par files to kind of build the missing ones. If you're missing 4 RAR files and you only had 1 par file, quick par, that's it, Adam. Yeah, you wouldn't have enough. So you had to fuck about. There was a lot of fanning about, but that was part of the fun. And then invariably you would get the game, you'd install it, and then you would never play it. But it was just the getting it that was the fun part. So that was when that came along. Hang on a tick. I'm going to put my light on. Ding. There we are. Yeah, I'm like that old uncle during the war. Windows Defender did not find any viruses. That's good. So yeah, that was, so when like news groups came along, that pretty much, when news groups came along with the broadband, that pretty much just wiped out the markets. But it didn't wipe it out for people like myself. I wasn't interested. I didn't have to go to the market. I could just go and download my own games. And then when things like excuse me. So that was the PC. Then, the what do you call it? Then, yeah, I think even things like even things like the SNES, you could buy, like, I mean, I had a SNES for a very short period of time. You could buy this device, Magic Drive or something it was called. You could basically run pirated games on the SNES, whatever, but I never got into that. So anyway, yeah, then the PlayStation came along, and got a PlayStation again, back to having to buy games again, and that was always a bit of a setback. You got a new machine, and it's like, oh, it's great, but I've got to buy bloody games, 40 quid a time. So we bought games, and that wasn't a thing. Then Commodore 64, Grant, I bet you never knew that was coming, contacted me to say, by the way, you can fit a chip in your PlayStation. I'm like, what? He says you can fit a chip that lets you play copied games, and it's like, but how do we copy games? Oh yeah, the bit I completely omitted to say at that point, in between, we eventually got CD burners for our PC, so we could download games, and then we could burn them onto. I mean, they're like double speed. It took like 40 minutes to burn a CD. So we had CD burners at that point. So then the PlayStation came along, and you couldn't just copy a game, because it was these black discs. If you put your PlayStation disc into a PC, I don't even know what it did, but you certainly couldn't just copy it using whatever it was that we used back in the day. And then again, funnily enough, Brian with the scars, Brian the ex-convict, he started selling the PlayStation games. So we started. Sorry, a bit I've completely missed out. Commodore 64 Grant says, yep, we can get our PlayStations chipped. Now, we had only bought them maybe a couple of months ago. And I mean, I paid, I don't know, I can't remember. I got Destruction Derby, and I can't remember what the other game was. Tekken, possibly. I got 2 games. Good evening, Marcus. How are you, mate? I bought 2 games. So anyway, we went through to a place called The Barras, which is it's a place in Glasgow, and it's a marketplace. It's been going for zillions and zillions of years, and it's where it's people with not a lot of money selling shite, basically. I mean, they literally they would sell like a second-hand tea cloth and second-hand cups and saucers, and it was people with not a lot of money would go along there, and they would buy it. They would buy buy stuff, food and that. But of course, what do you call it? They cottoned on to. So yeah, we went along to this Barras, and went along to the Barras, and we went in, and this guy's like, "Yep, right, it's 80 quid for your chip." Right, okay, right. You need to leave it with us. It'll be 2 hours. So we were handing over our £400 console to a complete and utter stranger, and then we went away for like a couple of hours. You're thinking, what's to stop these guys nicking it? Absolutely nothing. So anyway, we went back, and sure enough, there you go, mate. Computer, you took their word that it had a chip in it. It looked the same. Don't know. So while we were there, we bought a couple of pirate games, and that was very bizarre. I think they were like £5 each. Bought a couple of pirate games. Got home. I always remember we went in the back of a motorbike. It was my mate Grant. He had a motorbike, and so only one and only time I've actually been in the back of a motorbike, and it was quite exhilarating, I have to say. It was, and equally terrifying in equal measures. So yeah, got back, put the PlayStation on, put the copied disc, and then there it came. Wow, we're now playing copied games on a PlayStation, and that was before it became really popular. But within about 6 months, yeah, we used to go. Then we used to go along to the to Ingliston Market, the one I spoke about earlier on, and Brian was selling all his PlayStation games, and before long there was queues and queues and queues of people. But again, within 6 months, everybody in their auntie, and I'm talking about even old women. I remember seeing old age pensioners selling copied games, and I always thought there's just something not right about that. Really, yeah, I just felt that was wrong. And the funny thing was, I always kind of felt like it was like the, what do you call it, the Cantina Bar in Star Wars. It was like full of scum and villainy. I was Luke Skywalker, and I was going in there, and there was all these nerds and geeks and thieves and scum. They were all around me, and they were all doing the same. And I was no better than them. I was just as bad as them, but always felt dirty when I left Ingleson Market with your clutch of pirated games. So yeah, we used to go along there every Sunday, and you would try and squirrel as much money as you could. So you'd maybe have 30 quid, and Grant would have 30 quid, and we would get there. So we'd buy like 10 games, but of course, some of the games were coming in 2 discs. But it was great. You were going there with 30 quid, and you were coming back, and you ended up getting like 10 PlayStation games. Now, bear in mind, these games were 30, 40 quid, and you were getting like 10 a week. So very quickly, your collection went from like 2 games to like that, literally hundreds of games. And I always call that the PlayStation syndrome. And it's where you have all these copied games, and you simply don't play them. And because you've got so many games, you've got no interest in playing them. It was a weird thing. But then eventually, so we would go along there and we'd spend a bloody fortune on PlayStation games. And then I says, when this news group thing came along, excuse me, when this news group thing came along, we were able to download our own games, download PlayStation games. I got an Xbox, the original black Xbox. As soon as I got it, I instantly got it chipped, and I used to download all my games for that. The Dreamcast, there was no copy protection in games for the Dreamcast, so you could just download it, and you used a software program called Disc Juggler, but it had to be configured a certain way to work. So you used that to burn all your Dreamcast games. So yeah, I don't mind admitting now, I mean, I bought very, very few Xbox games because I was just getting copies. I was copying them constantly. I actually own more. Excuse me. I own more Xbox games now than I did back in the day when I had one. So yeah, I did a shitload of copying with the Xbox, shitload of copying with the PlayStation. Same with the Dreamcast. GameCube, I never ever copied any games for that. And then things like the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, when they came out, I never ever copied them. The thing was, they became the discs were like double density, and so it wasn't you couldn't just download a game and burn it on a disc. Your PC CD-ROM just physically wasn't capable of burning that particular game. And so at that point, that was when my piracy completely stopped. I bought all my games. I mean, I didn't buy many PlayStation 3 games because it was all the Xbox 360. It was only maybe about 5 years ago that I managed to get my Xbox 360 modded so I could download games. But I mean, I've got, I don't know, probably about 200 original 360 games. The only other console I can think of that I pirated to death was the Nintendo DS. They brought out this little card called the R4, and it allowed you just downloaded these games. And again, having broadband, you could download a game in like 5 seconds. And so, of course, you ended up with every single game. And I think the Nintendo DS is one of the systems that it was piracy actually ruined it for me. It completely killed it for me because I think what was the game I had? Was it Polarium? I think it was. I think it was. I had maybe a couple of games for the DS, and then very quickly I got the R4 card, or Matt's saying it's the DS4, whatever it is. And like I said, it's because you put your DS on and you had like 100 games, and I never played it. And I always kind of, to this day, I always felt that yeah, piracy did ruin the DS for me. The pirate games now, nah, I can't say I have. I couldn't tell you the last time I pirated a game. The thing is, my disposable income has obviously gone up a wee bit since 1985. Games have never been as cheap, especially now with things like Steam and Humble Bumble. You can get packs of games for, $10, and you get like 40 games. You can go to CX, you can buy all these games and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't think I don't know. Does anybody pirate games? I mean, does anybody pirate PlayStation 4 games? Maybe in 30 years' time, and I'm long gone. And broadband speed is like 1 terabyte per second. People will be able to download these games. I don't know. I don't know, but I've not pirated a game for a long, long time. I don't. I can't. I think that the only software that I use it as a pirate is a copy of Microsoft Word, and it's like for 2006. It's an old version. Yeah, well, Dell's saying there the Oculus. That's because it's kind of based on like an Android type thing. The piracy in that is pretty rife. I have got a few kind of backup games on that, but I don't do an awful lot with it, to be fair. But yeah, that was kind of my abridged version of software piracy. I have spoke about it in the past, but it was very much it was a thing. It was a thing, and I know it wasn't right. I'm not. Was I proud of copying games? Nah, not at all. But it was something. If you get the option, if you get the option, oh, is that right? I never realised that, Kenny. So Oculus piracy has actually died off, is it? You know what? I don't mind that. I mean, I don't mind. So does that store thing, whatever it's called, I can't remember the name of that program. Does that not work anymore? I've not actually put my Oculus Quest on for quite a while. What was going to say? Yeah, I don't, I don't miss piracy. Yeah, sorry, what was I going to say? Was I proud of it? No, I wasn't proud of it. You know, if I would much rather have been able to have bought all these games. But when somebody's given you the option to get all these games basically for free, why not? Why are you not going to take it? I know some people might say, "Oh, it's morally wrong," and of course it is. But I can categorically say, and I mean, how many years have I been? Was I a pirate? I don't know, 84 to about 95, 10. I don't know, 10 years, easily 10 years. I never, ever, ever made a single penny. I never, ever, ever sold any. I never do that. Um, don't get me wrong. I absolutely, I, I gave guys like Brian, Convict Brian, I gave him an absolute shitload of money over the years. So yeah, I did lace the pockets of the pirates, but personally, I would never charge anything. It just isn't something that I would ever do. So yeah. So listen, guys, God Almighty, that's an hour and 40. When I was starting this, I thought, Christ, I've got absolutely bugger all to actually say. So listen, apologies if there was any questions, but I think that's quite enough for me for everybody tonight. So yeah, listen, I hope you all have a really good weekend. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I will be back on Sunday, and I'm going to have another just in case you never saw it. There's my t-shirt. Look at that. How cool is that? Got that in London. Got that in Camden Town. I've also got an extra special t-shirt for Sunday for my Commodore 64 stream. I don't know what that is. I don't know, part 6, something like that. So anyway, listen, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And as always, thanks for watching. Take it easy.